Thank you. I appreciate Daniel for allowing me to come back and speak this year. So, so I thought through this presentation multiple times, and I figured I'm at the end of the day, so I could show you a whole bunch of slides, or I could actually give you a little bit intro, kind of kick off an install, and then kind of walk through some things and have you kind of throw stuff at me or come up with different ideas. And I think that would be more interactive for the last few minutes that we have as a session. Is that okay for you guys? David, are you happy if you're here? Did that sound good? Okay, I don't see him in the room. So a little bit about me real quick. So I got a BS and MS in computer science. I've been doing this whole development thing since I was probably about 10. I told the story yesterday, so I won't go too much into it. My dad worked on the line in Detroit, Michigan, building vehicles. He came home one day and just said, hey, I think this computer thing is going to be huge. I'm going to go to Montgomery Ward. If you guys probably don't know what that is an old company inside of the States that kind of like a Kmart, Walmart of today, or Target. And he bought me a VIC-20. And from there, he got me a modem. I don't think he really knew what he was doing when he got the modem. But when he got the modem, that's when things kind of connected the dots for me. And like I said yesterday, I didn't know that I loved telephony. All I knew, I loved connecting with people. So having the modem and having the ability to talk to people outside of my neighborhood who wasn't doing what I was doing. So there was none of my friends sitting there programming their VIC-20. Most of them who had VIC-20s or a game station or a console, they were playing games. I really never was a gamer. I always liked the ability to be able to tell the computer something to do, and it actually did it consistently, right, and resiliently. Well, as much as it could as a VIC-20. I mean, so I went through a VIC-20, I burnt that out, and then I got a Commodore 64. So to move on, because I have a short period of time, I just want to tell you a little bit about why I do this. This dependency graph kind of explains it. My wife depends on me, and then our 20-month-old depends on her. We have a 5-year-old, we have a 21-year-old, and we have a 23-year-old. So that gives you a little bit of a background of why I do this. And besides the fact that it's fun, but I need to actually put food on the table for the family. You can actually find me on Twitter at Mack Hendricks, and that's about it. So the agenda, once again, I'm going to give you a quick intro to dSIPRouter. I'm going to kick off an install. I'm going to use Terraform for that. So for those who don't know what Terraform is, it may be a little bit of a, you may just see the commands and just go. I won't spend too much time on that. You'll just see how it kind of works. I'll talk about the problems we're trying to solve. Talk about the architecture. Do some demo around that. I'm going to do kind of a cooking demo, so I'm going to start an install, and then I actually have an environment running already, just in case things go crappy. I want to talk about the roadmap and then questions. So that equals out about 30 minutes. So I got to get to going. So what is dSIPRouter? It's really simple. It's just really everybody keeps asking us to kind of create the same things. And so I just saw a need for just creating something very simple for people to be able to get up and going with Kamailio. Because a lot of people will come and say, hey, I want to set up Kamailio, and then you guys are on the list. Now, from time to time, we'll get somebody that says, hey, help us set up Kamailio. I don't know what I'm doing. So we kind of get the questions over and over again. So I wanted to speed up the adoption of Kamailio. Even though I know there's a huge community, but there's way more people that want to get involved in the community, and they just don't know how. It's just scary to them, right? So when they look at the Kamailio.config file, they get kind of freaked out. So really what I wanted to do was just create something that's real simple that allows them to do SIP trunking services and do PBX hosting. So we're not a general purpose GUI. If you want something like that, Cyremus would be great for being able to get kind of a view into all the database structures that's inside of Kamailio. But we really are using a very guided approach to how we want people to kind of leverage Kamailio. And the reason why, once again, why I'm doing this is I learned Asterisk this way. I basically downloaded TrickBox. Actually, I downloaded Asterisk at first, and I was like, I don't have a telephony background. I have a software development background. It was kind of tough for me. So I actually downloaded TrickBox, and then I was able to break things apart looking at how they did things. Obviously, when people build these GUIs, the dial plan looks very hairy. So one of the design principles that I wanted, and I'll talk about those in a second, I didn't want to create this real hairy, nasty configuration file. I really wanted to stay true to the configuration that comes basically shipped with Kamailio, with just this adding some guided approaches to helping people understand how it works. The core components here is really you have Python as the GUI. We also just added an API. I'll talk a little bit about that as well, which is also in Python. You have Kamailio, obviously. RTB engine is optional. We have a flag that you can say, do you want RTB engine turned on or not? We have bash scripts that kind of ties things together during the install script. And then we actually ship Docker and Nginx. So Docker is shipped because we have a plan of actually shipping other components. And we want to be able, at some point, run in a Kubernetes environment. So starting last year, we started moving down this route of doing things. And the first thing that we actually use Docker for is, one of the things that we do is we become like a endpoint aggregator for provisioning for Fusion PBX. And in order to do that, we run an Nginx server in a Docker container. But we also have other modules that we've been working on. They haven't been moving as fast, but we want to be able to, if anybody knows what Apache Spark is a machine learning library. So we want to start, we want to actually start shipping another container that just will look at the CDRs and look for fraud detection and anomalies and things of that nature inside of here. So it's a kind of a plan to kind of move down, one being more obviously cloud ready, and two, also being able to figure out a best way of shipping new modules and components of dSIPRouter. Project started in 2017. Why should you care? Well, I already talked about the adoption of Kamailio. I believe that this is kind of a starter project for some people. I know a lot of people here are tinkerers, so you may not actually use this project because most people who are tinkerers or who knows Kamailio very well, you're probably like, I can write it way better than Mack could. But there's situations where people, again, there's everybody that loves Kamailio is simply that. They love Kamailio. And there's a lot of other people that they kind of like Kamailio and they kind of heard about it. I kind of want to get those people involved. So it's a way for people to get started. And again, as they get more ingrained in understanding how Kamailio works, they may decide to take what we have, figure out how certain modules work. They may decide to kind of move and migrate to a more enterprise, proxy engine, right? So it's just a way for getting people onboarded. The other thing is that, and I already hit this before, is that it's just a great way to be able to learn how certain things kind of work in the Kamailio world. And you can break it, and then you just do a git clone and bring it back down. So, I mean, it's just a way for you just to kind of figure out how things kind of work in the Kamailio ecosystem. Some of the design principles that I really focused on was really, again, stay true to the Kamailio trunk. Really use standard modules, right? The other thing we wanted to do was that we wanted to be able to do something that we can deliver within 10 minutes. So from the time that you start up an image, a VM, and run some commands, and about 10 minutes later, it pops up as a ready-to-use SIP proxy, using and following people who came before us. So like Fusion PBX, like FreePBX, that kind of model of from machine to something that you can use. The other thing I wanted to do is also minimize database interaction, which is really hard sometimes in trying to do some things dynamically inside of Kamailio, but that was one of our principles. We've tried to stay true, but that's still it's a struggle, I'll say that. And then the other thing is that we wanted to push back on feature overload. People ask us all the time to add stuff in. And again, I have to remind people that we're trying to keep it simple. So if we keep adding all these different things in, now we become a full-blown enterprise SIP proxy, and in some cases, you just don't need that. In a lot of cases, yes, you don't. And again, the other last, I guess, design principle is that We just really want to provide a path and a approach to doing this type of implementing Kamailio. So last slide here, which I thought was kind of cool, is that, like, obviously, if you compare this to Kamailio or other projects, this is not that big of a deal. But this last month, we had 9 authors that pushed 18 commits and 43 commits to all the branches. So we had 269 additions, 143 deletions. This may seem baby to you. This is big to me because when I started this project, I didn't know if I was going to get a lot of support, and that was just a kind of an idea. And these people have just been jumping on left and right to help out and add things to this project. Okay, so let me kick off and install. Okay, so I'm going to make my screen much bigger so that you guys can see it. Okay, so no, that's still not big enough. Does that look okay to you guys, or I need a little bit bigger? All right. Okay, so if you want these scripts, let me know. But I use Terraform. So for those who don't know, Terraform is a way to be able to provision against multiple clouds. So basically, it has a provider architecture, so it can actually, the same scripting language that you use to build up your configuration for AWS is the same one you will use for distributing to DigitalOcean or to Azure, or any other cloud providers out there. So we use this for a couple different reasons. Number one, I'm lazy, and I don't want to have to actually go start up a VM, get the commands in, and all that good stuff. So what I do is I actually have a script that actually just provisions this thing for me. So I'm actually going to be provisioning on, let's see where I am. I'm actually have a workspace in Terraform called Kamailio World, and I am just going to, I thought I had the command in here, but we'll get it. I am just going to, there it goes. I am just going to use Terraform apply. There it goes. Terraform apply. And Terraform apply, basically what it'll do, there's a script sitting in that directory here. So this little directory that actually has all the logic for being able to create a droplet inside of DigitalOcean. So a droplet is very much like a EC2 instance inside of Amazon. And then I'm just going to specify the branch that I actually want to deploy, which is going to be 0.522. What this is going to do is actually spin up. I'll just do it. Droplet name, I'll just call it dSIPRouter Kamailio. If I can spell Kamailio, I'll just do that just in case we run into character issues. How many servers I want, so if I wanted to spin up a bunch of these, I could. It just came back to me and asked me, is it okay to do this? I have 2 servers to add, and it basically, it takes all the defaults I already have set, and I won't go into that in too much detail. But the most important thing here is that once it provisions, it will use something called clouding it. If you guys probably familiar with that, is that it's going to actually run all the commands that's needed to install dSIPRouter. It's only a few commands. Like if you look at this, I know you can't really see it very well here, but it's only like really five commands. If you count the /ns, or new lines, it's only 5 commands, but I'm really lazy. I don't want to do it. So I'm just going to say, yes, this looks good by typing yes. And it's going to go off and start doing this thing, hopefully, if the demo guys are there. What we're going to do is once we get an IP, we're going to actually log in, and we're going to start telling the cloud init log file so we can actually see it go through the installation process. So once that gives me an IP, we'll come back to that. So we're going to put this off to the side for a second and let it do its thing. And it's actually pretty fast, typically. I thought me just talking this right now, I'll come back with an IP, but there it goes. So there goes my IP. So I am going to take this IP. I'm going to hit a jump box, which this jump box already has. I'll make this screen bigger. So this jumpbox has our key in it. And I told it when it deployed, you didn't see it, I told it to use our key. Oops. All right, so here goes our box, right? dSIPRouter Kamailio. So I'm going to tell varlog cloud init -output.log. And it's going through the install process. So we'll wait, and it'll come up, and it should, if everything works well, you should see a big dSIPRouter logo that does its thing, okay? So I'm going to continue down the path of kind of giving you some more background, and then we'll check back periodically for that. So I got to get the boogie in because we're running out of time. All right, so what problems are we trying to solve? So I already talked about SIP trunking. We really have two concepts. We have long-term accounts. So for those who obviously understand the underpinnings of Kamailio, we manipulate the subscriber table to create username and passwords. Those are long-term accounts, and you can see that in the GUI. But we also came up with this concept of short-term accounts where we actually will, those are based on a duration of time. So we call it leasing a SIP account or a SIP trunk. What that means is that after a period of time, that SIP trunk will be cleaned up. So it won't be an issue with, what happens most of the time for newbies is that they get burned by having, obviously, a username or password being exposed, or something happens where they set something up and they forget about it. It happens to us, my company, sometimes too. So having the ability to create a SIP account and have it automatically expire is pretty neat and very, very powerful for us. The other thing we do is PBX hosting. So we support multiple PBXs. So Fusion PBX out of the box. Free PBX, we added support for that earlier this year, and other PBXs and endpoints as well. So I don't know what other ones that our customers try or our users try, but I've heard all different types, from Panasonic PBXs to old Nortel systems are routing through this system. Also, we have the endpoint provisioning proxy, which I talked about. Right now, it supports Fusion PBX, but at some point, we want to be able to support free PBX as well. The architecture for this is fairly simplistic, and I kind of went through it, but this is more of a lower level. MySQL, Kamailio, obviously sitting on top of that. The web UI interacts with Kamailio. Right now, it does it via RPC commands. We are adding we started using the JSON RPC module, so we're going to start just being able to decouple that a little bit more, right? So we want everything to sit in its own container. And we have, obviously, for job scheduling, we're using cron, optionally RT Engine, and then obviously Docker and Nginx, as I talked about before. So let me see where we are. So it's still installing, so we'll let that install, and I will take you through a environment that I already have. So this is what it looks like. It's actually my office. We added just some basic dashboard stuff. Actually, I found a little bug with the way it does processing of calls, but that's okay. We'll fix that. This is the 0.522 release. I'll just walk you through the interface a little bit. So we have carrier groups. So we come pre-built in with a set of carriers already. So the second biggest thing, besides them getting Kamailio up and going, is that getting carriers going. So we come with a few carriers already pre-populated. And so basically, if we look at SkyTel, right now it uses IP off, or you can use username and password off. And then here goes the endpoints for those there. So we update these endpoints every time we do a release, right? So just little things like that to make it easier for people to be able to use it. If you look at, so for PBX and endpoints, here uses where you can actually add an actual endpoint, right? So in this case here, I can add another one. I'll actually just use one that's here. So we have, we have one called Free PBX, one called Fusion PBX, if you look at the Fusion PBX one, we actually have what's called domain support turned on. So what that means is that you actually can take this script here and run it against your Fusion PBX system, and you can actually have it start pulling in the domains from Fusion PBX. So if you start, if you add domains, delete domains, dSIPRouter will be aware of that, so it'll know how to route the calls properly. So let's kind of go through that really quickly. So right now, in domains, you can see that I have 4 domains, and these 4 domains were actually created by the PBX called Fusion PBX. You can see that all has the same PBXs there. So PBX IDs. So if I go ahead and just add another domain, all right, I'll just do Detroit.org. I couldn't come up with anything better. So, all right, so Detroit.org is there. And if I go back to dSIPRouter, and it runs pretty, I think it's every couple of minutes or something like that, every minute I believe it is. And we keep doing this, we'll come back and we'll get a Detroit PBX being there. Of course, when I'm sitting up here waiting on it, it seems like forever. But we'll let it just go for a second. All right, I'll give it a second. Maybe I caught it at the time where it went. All right, well, we'll give that a second. And while that is going on, our new instance of dSIPRouter came up. So when dSIPRouter comes up, it actually gives you username and password. It also gives you an API token as well. What we talked about before is that we added some capability to do an API. And for being able to send requests to it, obviously you need a token to be able to authenticate yourself. So while that one is going, to give me a little bit of time, I will go over here. And we will grab the password. Seems like everything moves slower when you're presenting. So we'll let that go for a second. We'll go back. All right, so Detroit.org actually is here now, okay? And, okay, cool. And we'll save this as well. Well, never, I won't save that for right now. But this is a brand new install that came up, comes already pre-configured. I just wanted to kind of show you how easy it is for it to come up and get to going. So I'm gonna use the one I have, because I only have a few more minutes to go. But the other key thing here is that why is it cool for us to be able to proxy domains like this, right? So the real cool factor here is that, and I'll use this to kind of explain it. Oops, not share. Is that now that, so I have a Fusion PBX instance there with some domains on it. dSIPRouter knows about them, and it could be multiple Fusion PBX boxes. I'm just showing one. But now I can register against one of these particular domains through dSIPRouter. So now I only have one IP natted, and now I can do failover between these 2 boxes. I can take an actual box out for service without causing mass disruption. Because you got to remember, a lot of the people who are starting to want to use a SIP proxy, they actually started getting customers by just having free PBX boxes out there. So for them to be able to have dSIPRouter in front and make it easy is kind of critical for them. From a provisioning standpoint, likewise, is that as soon as a a Fusion PBX instance is actually provisioned. We spin up a actual Nginx container that does the proxying for provisioning. So actually now you can go to dSIPRouter, whatever the name of the host name is, app provision and the actual Mac address, and then you could pull down the configuration for the phone, right? And then you can provision. So now dSIPRouter is not only doing the proxying for the SIP traffic, but also doing the proxy for provisioning. And I'm about to run out of time, is that the other thing I want to talk about really quickly is that, I'll just show it versus doing it, is that we can actually use this API and actually create an actual a lease SIP account. So you'll see it creates a lease ID, and then whatever the default domain you have configured, it'll use that. And then also the time to live. So I gave it the time to live up here. So I gave it 600 seconds. And then it told me what host name and a username and password. So I can use that, and after 600 seconds, that account will go poof, it'll disappear. And then likewise, if, you probably can't see this, but if something happens rogue before that 60 seconds, we actually have a revoke API. It's all the way down there, but I can revoke that particular lease as well. So that way, it's kind of like a break glass. Something bad happens, just kill it off. So those are like some of the cool things. And real quickly, because I'm running way out of time, is that this is our roadmap. So right now is where we're at in 5.2.2. Really for 6.0, which is coming in August, really building out the RESTful interface. Ability to limit concurrent calls is one of the things that we keep people here, want. We're going to add some more monitoring capability and a few other things as well. But that's primarily the focus. And then how do you get started? You can just download and install from GitHub. We have an AWS Marketplace image, so you can just go there. You can search for dSIPRouter, and we have it all different distributions there already. The documentation is at Read the Docs, and we have a support form on Google. So that's it. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciating your work. Question in the back while I'm wiring myself.
Sure.
That looks really cool. One of the things I didn't see on your roadmap, and I noticed during your demoing periods, was HTTPS is missing in lots of places there. Is that on your roadmap in the near term?
I'm sorry, what's missing? I'm sorry.
HTTPS?
So HTTPS is already there. So the biggest problem with so right now, if you go get dSIPRouter, there's actually a spot in the GUI. They took me off, so I can't show you, but that actually has SSL parameters there for the actual certificate and key.
Okay.
The reason why we were shipping with it already turned on automatically. The reason why we stopped shipping it, because we actually don't run an actual full-blown web server. We're using the Python built-in HTTP server just to make it lightweight. In order really to use it and make it so that it doesn't fall over, we really need to probably put Nginx in front of it and then do it that way. So we're just trying to figure out how the best way to do it. But if you wanted to do it, you can do it almost like you can do it right now.
Okay.
Yep.
On your roadmap, I didn't see support for Postgres at all. Is that something you guys are planning on doing?
So we've been really, so the quick answer is no. We have not thought through that. If that's something that people want, I have no problem doing it. We've just been doing it because we understand MySQL better than we understand Postgres. That's really what the deal is.
Okay. Thank you, Mack, and
Yeah, no problem.
thank